So in this tutorial, we're going to go over the Chapter 3 SPSS exercises. So the dataset you'll be using in this is the HINTS 12 SSDS dataset. So you're going to want to open that up in SPSS on your computer. Okay, so in order to access that, you can either double-click open it from your jump drive, or I downloaded it again from the website and I can just double-click it off the desktop. And when you get here, it'll either be in data or variable view. I like to keep it in variable view. It's just a little easier for me. So in order to do the first part of the problem, question 1. You've decided to examine the differences in the age of male and female subjects in HINTS 2012 dataset. So you examined the variable age group A. So the first thing you want to do is construct a bar graph for that variable. So we go to Legacy Dialogs, bar. We're going to make a simple bar chart for this one. I like to display the variable names and sort them alphabetically. You can do that by right-clicking. So we go to age group A. That'll be your category access. Go up here to percent of cases. N of cases is the number of cases. It's your sample, basically. And then we go here, and SPSS spits out this bar graph for us. You can double-click on this bar graph, and it'll bring up this chart editor. And if you click this icon right here, it'll put labels on all of your columns. You can just X out of that. Now if you want to copy and paste this into like a Word document, you can go to this copy special here. You right click on the image, copy special, select image, JPEG or PNG. I like to save as default because I'll probably do this repeatedly. Then you can open up a Word document and you can label your work. And you can either right click and paste, or I like to just hit Control V and it just pastes into your Word document. Construct bar graphs separately for men and women using the variable gender C. So what we'll do here is we'll go to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, and here we're going to select Clustered because we want to see both variables. So we put an age group, and we define that by gender. Again, we want to hit this percent of cases, then hit OK. And here we'll get a clustered bar graph, which will show the males and females side by side. Once again, you can double click on this, hit this little button over here that says Show Data Labels, and that'll give you all the percents. And right click, copy special, image, open up your Word document, hit Control V, and you can paste that right into your Word document. Now if you don't want this taking up more pages, because we all know printing costs can be kind of hard to swallow, you can adjust the size of these images by clicking on them and selecting these boxes and dragging. And if you get just the right size, you'll get it to fit on one page, just like that. So for the third part of this question, briefly describe the overall age distribution and the difference in age groups between men and women. Jump back to your Word document and start analyzing. Question 2. Are individuals with higher educational attainment more likely to look for information about health or medical topics from any source? So what this question wants us to do is construct separate pie charts for Seek Health Info by the amount of educational attainment somebody has. So in order to do that, we come back to SPSS, we go to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, Pie Chart. We're doing summaries for groups of cases. Then we define our slices by Seeks Health Info. And then we want to look at education level. So we take this variable and put it into the columns. Now remember, we want to click this percentage of cases. Then we hit OK. And then we'll get our output here. double click on that, you can get data labels. And then you can hit copy special. Open up your Word. And copy and paste. But the other part of this question is we have to compare the pie charts. So what difference in seeking for information and health exists between the different educational groups? So basically they want you to do an analysis of what you see in those pie charts. In this question they want us to examine if there is a difference in responses between men and women in terms of their health condition, general health, and their occupational status, occupation status, and whether they have ever been diagnosed as having cancer, ever had cancer. So we've got three variables to work with. And the first thing they want you to do is, based on the level of measurement for each variable, determine the appropriate graphic display. So the first thing we want to do is we want to come to one of the variables like general health, and we can go to descriptive statistics, and it's going to show us everything we need to know about this. So we can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 categories that are going to show up. So a good rule of thumb is if you've got 4 or more categories, you probably don't want to go with a pie chart. You probably want to use a bar graph because more than 4 categories, you're going to have very small slices. So we're going to use a bar chart for this variable. So we can come here, we can go to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, Bar, Simple, and we can look up General Health. Put that in the category axis. Percent of cases. Click OK, and there we have our bar graph. Our second variable, occupation status, go back to SPSS, the variable view, and we look for occupation status. We can run descriptive statistics, and we can see that there's a lot of categories here: unemployed, employed, homemaker, student, retired, disabled, and other. So we're going to want to use a bar chart again. So we do the same deal: bar, define, find occupation status, make sure percent of cases is selected, hit OK, and here we have a bar graph. And our last variable is, have you ever been diagnosed with cancer? And you either have yes or no. So we don't have to run through all that to figure out how many categories there are because it's a yes or no question, or a dichotomous variable, which you'll learn about later. For a yes or no question, you can do a pie chart. It's pretty simple. The next part of this question wants us to produce separate graphs for men and women. So we go back into SPSS, we go to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, Bar, and I like to use cluster graphs here. And so we find our variables. We're going to look for general health, put that in the category axis, and we're going to define that by gender because we want to look at the relationship of men and women. And we make sure percent of cases is selected, and we hit OK. And we get this graph here. Double click on that. We get our data labels. Now sometimes you're going to see this show up where we only get one set of data labels. You can drag the data labels so that the other ones show up, and you can kind of organize it so it doesn't look so messy. It's all very click drag, not very difficult to work with. There you go. And then you hit copy special, make sure image is selected, go back to your Word document, and then hit Control V and paste it right into your homework. The next thing we want to look at is occupation status. So we can go to Graphs, Legacy Dialog, Bar, Clustered. We can get rid of this general health, and we can look for occupation status. And then click OK. So now we've got it by occupation status. Double click on this, make some data levels, and just organize them in a way that makes sense. And we can go here, copy special, go to our Word document, and copy and paste. And then we can adjust it all to make sure it all stays on the same page so you're not wasting printer paper. The last thing we're going to look at is the pie chart of cancer. And so we want to define our slices by, let's see, ever had cancer. And we want to put in gender. Make sure we got percent of cases selected again. And so that's going to produce this pie chart for us. We'll add some data labels so it makes sense. And then copy and paste it into our Word document. So the final question is more like a thinking question. You just have to determine what level of measurement you're looking at and what's the best way to represent that graphically. So the first one is rent or own, whether respondent rents or owns. This is kind of like a yes-no question. It's dichotomous. You can only have one or the other answer. So like we talked about in the last question, you're going to want to use a pie chart for those kind of things. It's just pretty easy to use. And then when diagnosed cancer, we know that that's an interval variable. So the best way to represent an interval variable, well, think back to what you've learned in class to figure out how to represent that. Income ranges, annual family income of respondent. Now, we're not sure exactly what this variable could be, so we can do a quick investigation and figure that out. So if we go back into SPSS, we can find the variable income range. We can do descriptive statistics, and we can see that each one of these has a category, 0 to 9999, 10,000 to 14,999, all the way up to 200,000 or more. So think back to what you've learned and figure out what kind of variable is that. And now we can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories. So what would be the best way to represent graphically this variable with 9 categories? The variable we're dealing with is quality care. So we can again use SPSS to tell us what kind of variable it is and how we should represent that. So we jump back into SPSS, we find the variable quality care, run descriptive statistics. As we can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories here: excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. So think back to what you have learned. What kind of variable is this, and how can we graphically represent something that has 5 categories? So that's all for this tutorial. I hope it has been helpful to guide you through the SPSS exercises. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always text me or email me. And I do tutoring hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock in Macumsey Room 119.